So we're going to get started. Three, two, one. Hi, everyone. This is Katharine Pichardo, President and CEO at Latino Victory, where our mission is to build Latino political power so that our voices and our values are reflected in the policies that move our country forward. And with that, it's been an intense week. It feels like it's been an intense year. But today's conversation is a reflection on Tuesday's primaries. Nationally, we had three states with early primaries, but of course, everyone's eyes are on Texas. And I am excited to be joined today by my dear friend, Michelle Vallejo, who is a former congressional candidate and is Latino Victory's special advisor to the Texas Coalition, which was a new initiative to really build community around the work that needed to happen in advance of the midterm elections in Texas. So, whether it is investing in early organizing and building a network and partnerships with the organizations on the ground, as well as investing real dollars in paid media and boots on the ground, Latino Victory has been at the forefront of that work, and we couldn't have done it without you, Michelle. So thank you for joining me for this Substack. And let's get to it. Texas voters went to the polls for the primary 2 days ago. Obviously, we also had early voting. Um, Voters in general, but Latinos in particular, voted at a high level. What happened, and what are the biggest takeaways that you can share with us about the Texas election?
So we are so excited, motivated, empowered, encouraged by what we saw on Tuesday. And Katharine, like you said, it's not just Democratic voters, but it's specifically Latino Democratic voters in Texas. And I even want to say just Latino voters, because Latino voters sometimes are treated as, oh, they're switching from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Or then there's another headline that says, oh, they're switching from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. But those headlines are false. Latino voters vote based on what's hurting them every single day in their household, at the dinner table, how challenging it is for them to make ends meet, live their everyday lives. And we are in a moment in our country where Latinos are particularly getting targeted by our current administration. Y no nos vamos a dejar. I love our governor nominee, our gubernatorial nominee, Gina Hinojosa's tagline, No te dejes, because it is perfect for this moment. And what we saw is that in Latino majority precincts and regions and entire counties, the increase in voter turnout compared to how people came to turn out even in the presidential election for Kamala Harris has increased. So this is a unique data point where we don't have the specific names yet, we don't have the specific voter files yet, but it's very telling that Latinos are paying attention. Latinos are embracing their electoral power, and they're coming out to the polls and making their decision made, and their decision have an I we talk about this all the time, but the voter power in Latino communities is immense. And we are deserving of investment, infrastructure, continued communication, and education on the issues, so that we are informed when we go to the ballot box. And that's what we saw on Tuesday. We saw voters being sure of who they knew was their candidate, making that choice. And then now we're seeing in counties along the border that voters are coming out, voting Democrat in historic rates. And so this is a moment where we need to get to work. Sure, we need to celebrate. We need to pat each other on the back because it's been a long run, this primary cycle, but we have to keep going. And this is just more evidence that we're right on target. We're right in the moment and in the place we need to be, connecting with voters every single day, talking about the issues that matter to all of our families. And we're going to keep pushing.
For sure. And I would argue, based on what you say, something obviously that sometimes folks ignore is the fact that Latino voters are persuasion voters, right? To your point, we want to understand how the candidates relate to the issues that impact our everyday lives. We understand that civic activism is earned, and it's also a superpower. And so, what am grateful to see is that more and more the Latino community is owning that power and saying, ya basta, let's go. And Texas certainly has been at the center of the universe this cycle for a couple of different reasons, right? As we look at the electoral map going into the midterms, we know that the path to victory for Democrats to win back the House is Latino voters. Out of the 61 battleground districts, 39 of them are Latino influenced districts, which means that swing in the Latino electorate can impact the outcome of that particular election in a big way. And so we're seeing also that the path to Latino voters starts in Texas, which is one of our largest population hubs for the Latino community. And so as you look at the election from Tuesday, who do you think are some of the winners and losers from that election?
Yeah, so definitely number one winner in my mind are the Latino voters because they made a statement that they are not going to be overlooked, they're not going to be ignored, and they voted for the candidates that invested in Latino communities. I want to point to, of course, this Senate race that was really exciting. I think we had two great candidates with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and State Representative James Tallarico. And Tallarico's team just did more when it came to connecting to Latinos in the way that our communities get information, whether that's through Spanish radio, whether through its digital media in Spanish and in bilingual media, but also just relational organizing, letting people know and empowering people that they have what it takes to not only make their vote count, but also their neighbors' vote count. So that's one thing that came into effect. Also, I think this is a perfect highlight our slate of amazing candidates that we endorse. And if you don't mind, I want to read by how much they won because these are not close races. These were decided wins. And so one of our more exciting candidates or most exciting candidates is our Tejano star, Bobby Pulido, running in Texas 15, where I'm from. And so he won with 60.
And where you ran.
And
So,
where I
so this is special for you.
It's very personal because the fight for South Texas, the fight for Texas 15 didn't start this cycle, but I'm really energized and proud of the fact that how we have come together as a community to make sure that we're going to win this seat back for the people and for our families. But Bobby Pulido won with 67.6%, so about almost 70% vote. Sylvia Garcia, our champion, one of our first congresistas from Texas, who just came into office in 2017. She won her election in 2017 alongside Congresswoman Veronica Escobar from El Paso. She won with 60% of her vote. And I need to highlight Sylvia Garcia's race because that is a district that got redrawn. That is a district where Greg Abbott came in and said, you know what, we're going to strip the power away from Latino communities. It became a district that was not Latino majority anymore. We had a Latina in that race. We knew she's a champion for the issues that are our priorities and for Texans in general. And the voters knew. The voters knew that they had a champion in Sylvia Garcia, and she won. Another race that's critical down in South Texas is Texas 34. Our champion there and our incumbent is Congressman Vicente Gonzalez. He is another congressman that has been targeted by redistricting efforts to get him out of office, to redraw his seat to favor Republicans. And he won over 60% of the vote. And so we need to do everything we can to organize in Texas 34. That is where Trump is deeply invested. He was there the weekend before our primary election day. And let me tell you something, no hizo nada. That didn't do anything to discourage Democrats from coming out to vote and voters that were voting for the first time to vote in the Democratic primary. And so Trump, I think, is seeing the blood in the water that Texas does not belong to him and that South Texas is not a target that he could win. And it's because of the people and it's because of our champions on the ballot that are standing up against him.
And before you move on to other candidates, let me put a pin on these congressional races that you've highlighted. The fact is that the entire goal of the redistricting effort in Texas was not only to strip communities of color of their electoral power, but it was also to really turn at least 5 seats, as they termed it, from blue to red. And so Donald Trump told Greg Abbott, go find me 5 seats. They were counting on those voters that came out for Trump in 2024 to hold and come out for Republican candidates in 2025, 26. We've seen that's not the case. Whatever gains Trump made in 24 are no longer there. As a matter of fact, I would argue have gone into the negative numbers. And let me just give you for those who are tuning in just now, in some of the districts that the GOP redistricting, what we saw was that Democratic turnout greatly exceeded Republican turnout. Let's not forget, this was a primary, right? So when we talk about Bobby winning with almost 70% of the vote, some might argue, well, yes, but he was, contending amongst other Democrats. That's not necessarily going to be the case once Republicans come out. But the fact is that in many of these districts, you also had Republican primaries. So, for example, in Vicente Gonzalez District 34, where again, it was redrawn presumably to attract, give opportunity for a Republican to win, 56,198 Democratic voters came out versus 36,520. That's a huge delta. In District 28, 66,405 versus 16,714. In District 9, 33,613 Democrats came out versus 29,000 and some odd Republicans. So in every district, Democrats came out in greater numbers and with greater enthusiasm to vote in this election. A primary that, by the way, had great historic numbers in terms of voter turnout and certainly historic numbers for Democrats. So, can we use this as a bellwether for what's going to happen in the midterms?
I think we can, Katharine. And just to highlight how this was affected across the map for Texas, overall, we had 2.3 million Democrats, over 2.3 million Democrats come out, and only 2.1 million Republicans come out. And Democrats overall came out by over 100 and close to over 150,000 voters. This is amazing. This is a bellwether. And also to point, this is not the first test that Texas has had. We just had a special election in Senate District 9 where Latino voters resoundingly came out for Taylor Remmett. And that is another proof point that this is starting to look like a pattern and it's starting to look like a trend. It's not just a moment, it's starting to feel like a movement. And with the champions that we have on the ballot, and the moment that we're living in that is directly affecting our Latino families and communities with immigration, with the economy, and also with just access to general basic needs, we are coming out. And I'm very proud of Texas today. Sometimes we have disappointing experiences after elections, but not this time. And
You're wearing the Lone Star State hat very proudly today.
Oh yes, I am. I'm a proud Texan today.
Well, listen, that brings me to the statewide races. We have a Latina who, for the first time, has an opportunity to become the first Latina Latino governor of Texas, but also a Democrat, right? In a state that for many was long lost. We also have James Tallarico now as the Democratic nominee who's running for U.S. Senate. Um, what do you have to share in terms of the mood on the ground for these statewide races and finally turning Texas blue?
I will just say something personally that I feel relieved that we have amazing candidates and champions at the top of the ballot because I'm able to see the races up and down the ballot and throughout the whole state of Texas. Not every single one, but the amazing thing that Latino Victory does is it supports candidates up and down the ballot, not just for the federal races, not just statewide races, but also our commissioner races, also um, more local municipal races. And that's what I'm considering because we need to build a bench, right? We need to build leaders that are coming into school board, to state legislation, to our federal candidates, our federal state holders. Um, and the fact that we have such an amazing lineup at the top of the ballot gives me so much hope because we have such great champions fighting. For example, I'm thinking of Commissioner Leslie Briones, Commissioner Adrian Garcia in Harris County, amazing champions who have such bright futures that I am excited and so honored to be supporting through this work.
Candace Valenzuela as well.
Yes, and we need to make sure that they make it past the finish line. And having such amazing candidates and champions like Gina Hinojosa, James Tallarico, and our congressional candidates at the top of the ballot, this means that they're going to bring energy. They're going to bring voters to see our down ballot races, our down ballot candidates who deserve the investment, who deserve the attention. And so it's a powerful moment to have the right people in as our nominees. And for example, Gina Hinojosa is a proven champion like James Tallarico at the State House. We have had Republican control in the state of Texas for 3 decades. That's almost my entire life, right? But we don't give up. We know that there's a better chance or there's a better future for Texas. And we're going to do everything we can to reach that point. And the people that we have on our ballot, the champions that we're supporting through Latino Victory, and the champions that our voters are coming out to support, all feel like the right fit. So it feels like this is the right combination to create a cultural shift in Texas. Where younger voters are getting plugged in and encouraged to get engaged themselves, to speak out, to tell us what they think through social media, through the platforms and the organizations that we know are alive and well in Texas. And this is just a moment for the rest of the country um, to lean on Texas a bit, to have hope for Texas, but to also see us as a partner and an ally to winning back the House majority, to flipping the White House, to get the right people in the Senate so that we get back on track and we get this country back to a place where we are all proud.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that because I agree. Ultimately, we can't run those top line candidates if we're not creating a bench of candidates that are running for school board and county commission and what we see in Texas, there are 64 counties in Texas where Latinos make a majority of the population. But oftentimes we haven't felt that our voices have been at the decision-making tables. So that's where, and someone commented on the chat, I'm excited to hear you say things like, this is not a moment, this is a movement. Because the fact is that we have momentum. And now we have a job to do, right? To keep that momentum going, and not only get through the midterm elections, but certainly build that bench and build that road back to the White House. We also have the census that will then trigger redistricting, and it's anticipating that Texas potentially gets another 4 or 5 congressional seats. So the work that we're doing now, to me, and tell me if you agree or disagree, is really creating, also setting the ground for candidates to sprout in those new districts that will be created.
No, I agree with you full-heartedly. And I think it's important that we are in the fight through the electoral cycle, but also stay on the ground year round because we need to be ready for the efforts that we know Republicans are already making to make the census count challenging, to make it scary, to intimidate our community members from filling out that survey. And we know that that has long term consequences. I mean, we went through this ridiculous redistricting effort in Texas and across the country and other states as well,
Huh?
um, because this is a way that Republicans like to manipulate people power. They like to take it away from us. They want to disenfranchise our communities. And what I love is that this is a numbers game. And in Texas, Latinos are only becoming more and more of a majority demographic. We are 40 or 41% Latino, and it's only going to get more Latino. So we're only going to become more diverse. And so this work is critical because it's not just something that's going to impact this election cycle, where the chances are high that we win back the House majority with these congressional races in Texas. But it's also going to be impact for 2028, 2030, and the next couple of years, without a doubt.
And tell me, we also had Marcos Velez, who was a mostly unknown candidate, right, in Texas, um, labor organizer, someone who has done a lot of underground civic engagement, but never, or not as a candidate per se. A well known figure statewide, ran for lieutenant governor, and for all intents and purposes did extremely well with very little resources. I know that his race might be advancing to a runoff. What are your thoughts on that? And I want to highlight the fact, for folks who are not necessarily familiar with campaign strategy, a lot of these races are being won on the ground. Around the country, if you look at people like Ana Lilia Mejia, who won for Congress in New Jersey, right? The race in Tarrant County, and many others around the country. It's really building that people power that works. Do you have any thoughts on that particular race that you want to share?
I do. And one thing I want to highlight for anyone tuning in, and even people tuning in from Texas, but across the country, is the fact that labor has power in Texas. Labor isn't given its as much as it needs in Texas and as much as it deserves. But Marcos Velez is a labor champion, and he is supported by labor organizers, labor networks across the state. He received over 600,000 votes in a statewide election during a primary, which is amazing, getting over a third of the vote, advancing to a runoff, which is amazing because all of the candidates that we supported through the Texas primary advanced. And those advance as well to the runoff. And this just means that we did the right thing to give our voters an option, so that they pick the right champion, and whoever comes out of that runoff is going to be the right person, the champion that we're going to support up the ballot here in Texas. But Marcos in particular is um, someone who I think represents the future of leadership at Texas because of his labor background. And Katharine, we were having a conversation with Marcos where he was describing the width and the depth of a specific door at a specific workshop area. And so that just told us immediately this works with his hand. This person works long days, hard hours, and is alongside other people who are making Texas run. And so those are the experiences and the people that we need to be championing. So I'm very proud that we supported Marcos Velez, and we're going to continue supporting him through the runoff. I'm excited to see him advance. Um, but no matter what, he is plugged in. He's someone in our on our radar, in the network, and he's not going to go anywhere no matter what.
For sure. And so we're running into time, but lots of exciting information coming out of Texas as we move on to the primary season and onto the midterm elections in November. Certainly, much more to be said on all of these topics once we get back data from the Board of Elections and we can start to see more details and raw numbers. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners before we say goodbye for today?
My final thought is to stay plugged in, keep your eyes on Texas, and send resources. Sign up to volunteer for our candidates. Send a donation. Every donation of any size goes a long way. We're going to keep pushing hard all the way through November and past that. And we're here to win. That's our mission. That's our goal. And excited to be doing this with everyone here on our live, but also alongside all of our Latino Victory champions, partners, and friends as well.
Let's go. Well,
Woo!
thank you, Michelle. And thank you, everyone, for listening. You could find Latino Victory at latinovictory.org, where you can learn more about our candidates, about the work that we do programmatically. And certainly, there's a little button to donate, to apply for endorsement if you're running for office, and to volunteer. So thank you all, and see you next week. Take care.